Most of us in today's generation think of life as there's an app for that. And in the public sector, we're still kind of used to the world of there's a form for that.
What if we made it easier for everyone to lend a hand?
What if we could help your city work better just by using your smartphone?
What if everyone had the same access to information as City Hall?
What if City Hall spoke with citizens the way citizens speak with each other?
What if some of the most talented designers and technologists in the country apply those talents to building web apps that work for cities and citizens?
Code for America is looking for people who are ready to find out. We want to see how the talent of the tech industry makes cities work better, and we need your help. As a Code for America Fellow, you'll spend 11 months building technology that makes government more open, more efficient, and more responsive. And you'll do that by working with civic and industry leaders to build applications that can be spread to cities across the country.
It's your chance to do good while doing what you're really good at.
Every new movement needs heroes. And the first Code for America Fellows are going to be in the spotlight.
If you believe that we need to bring that culture of our life into Washington and the states and local governments throughout this country, please join us and make a difference.
Code the next chapter of American history. Apply to be a Code for America Fellow today.
I saw that and was very sort of inspired and moved to do this. Just a little bit of background on Code for America. So we're working with 4 cities this year. This is the first year. It's a nonprofit organization, but it's really being run more like a startup. The whole thing is basically an experiment, and the hypothesis is that if you take sort of people who are hackers and mix them with cities, you can basically do a lot of damage over the course of a year. And mostly by opening data, by open sourcing software, and basically giving the masses, giving the citizens access to the data that's really theirs. And for me, so this was me a year ago, almost exactly, and it's in Lake Tahoe. I was on a nice company retreat. I founded a company. We raised $4.5 million, and everything was going awesome. We were super pumped, and I actually left that to do this because I think like working in government, like this space is a huge opportunity, and you can really it's a huge opportunity to make a lot of money. It's also a huge opportunity to make a big difference. And I hope I will convince all of you of that tonight, and basically recruit you to be citizen coders and open source contributors to hack on your government. So this is us. There's seven fellows who are working in Boston. I should go back 2 slides. So we're working in 4 cities, and we're working on 4 completely different projects, right? So there's 20 fellows total. 7 of them are here in sort of Boston, Cambridge area, working on a project with Boston. And there's also a project in Philadelphia, Seattle, and DC. All the projects are different. And the idea is, the reason they're all different is, one, it's an experiment, so we should try to do a bunch of different things and see what works. But also, there's this general idea that cities are more alike than they are different. And so if we build software, make it open source, if it's useful to the city of Boston, it'll probably be useful to pretty much every other similar sized city in America, right? Boston gets a snowstorm and needs to have some software to figure out what the best route to plow is, for example. And if we improve that software, that improvement could be shared across pretty much any city that gets snow, right? So it's sort of the scientific experimental approach that we're taking. So this is us. People from a lot of different backgrounds are working on Code for America, but these are the fellows who are in Boston. We're all from San Francisco, so we're basically in Boston for the entire month of February, meeting as many people as we can, trying to recruit as many people as we can. We're actually working out of the mayor's office in City Hall. So we're having some great meetings there and making some great connections. But then in March, we go back to San Francisco and spend the rest of the year hacking on the project that we're going to work on. And so, yeah, right, there's 7 of us, but really, like, I'm more interested in all of us, right? Like, the 7 of us can only do so much. What democracy is really about is we the people. And one thing, like, we want to do is make sure that all government data is accessible to everybody, because it's your data, right? You paid for it, and as a result of that, like, you should be able to do whatever you want with it, right? Like, you should be able to build applications with it. Ultimately, you need to, like, you should have the ability to hack your government, and that's the ultimate goal of our project. Kind of giving regular citizens the ability to work on government projects. And so, in addition to sort of open data, we also believe in open source. So all Code for America software will be open sourced, be released under a BSD license. That's something we specifically negotiated with the city when we partnered with them. But I guess I would say sort of raise your hand if you think that by default, municipal software should be open source. Okay, great. So that's like pretty much everybody. I guess raise your hand if you think it shouldn't be by default open source. Okay, so nobody. So why isn't it, right? Like that's kind of weird. And those are sort of the questions that we're asking in City Hall with each project we encounter. So like my dream is that Boston, Cambridge, but basically like your city should have a fork button, right? And you should be able to hit that fork button and submit a patch to the city, right? Like, and submit a pull request and be able to see that pull request improve your city, right? Your city you should be able to, as a regular citizen, as a coder, write code to make your city better. And so we're doing that in a couple ways already. One of the first projects we worked on, I actually started working on this even before the fellowship started, was a project called Open 311. So this is a Ruby gem. Open 311 is a standard for submitting issue requests to the city. So if you see a pothole or something like that, you can actually take a photo of that on your mobile phone. Your device has GPS, so it knows the location, or you can enter a location if it doesn't have GPS. And you can actually post that to a web service that will integrate with the government, right? The city will get that request and know that there's a pothole there, and they'll know exactly where it is because it's tagged with that information. Like we basically wrote a Ruby wrapper just to allow you to write Ruby apps that interface with that. So we'd love to have help from anyone on this project if you're interested in it, or just to use the project, right? To build an app that actually does something interesting with that data. You can both submit requests to the government, and you can also get requests from the government. So you can see what issues have been submitted. Is there a spike in issues in a particular area? Is there an area where issues are going unresolved for a long period of time? These are all things that you can do with this data. Open 311 is an open standard. Version 2 of the specification just got released, and so this gem supports version 2. There's 3 cities that currently implement version 2. The first to implement it was Washington, D.C. The second was San Francisco, and the third is Boston, which just rolled it out recently. So it's a really exciting opportunity to get your hands on some new data that wasn't available before, build some interesting apps, and just like interact with your city as a contribute to your city as a citizen, and sort of help your neighbors or get the information that you're interested in getting. And there's some people who are actually already doing this. They started a company called SeeClickFix, and it sort of is what it sounds like. This is just a sample search page for Boston that shows, somebody said, renters don't know the parking rules, and you can sort of see like 10 people voted for that. Renters need to be notified of the parking rules, right? And that's something that, there probably wasn't a form for in the city before that, but now that data is getting pushed into the city, there's a social component, people can vote it up, and the top issues can bubble to the top and can be addressed. So these are all the open issues in Boston, and they're interesting. People report graffiti all the time, on public buildings or buildings that the city is responsible for cleaning up. So those are some of the common apps for things like SeeClickFix. How many people sort of recognize this? This is the Department of Motor Vehicles, I think in San Francisco, and this is the enemy, right? Like this is what we're up against, and so like there's this sort of general perception that government is inefficient, and I think to some extent that's true. It's not entirely true. It's not true across the board. There's some things that government actually does very well. But there's definitely areas where the bureaucracy slows things down and a government can't deliver a service as well or as efficiently as maybe a private entity could, but because the government is sort of the sole provider of that, we're kind of stuck with this situation, right? We're all sitting in chairs waiting for our number to be called so that we can renew our driver's license, which should probably just be some sort of online web form. But the reason why I'm excited about this, the reason why I left a startup to work on this, is because where there's inefficiency, there's opportunity, right? So if the government is providing a service, and people need that service, and you can do that service better than government, then there's a huge opportunity for you to sort of cash in on that, right? And I don't know what that looks like in the form of the DMV, but maybe it's having someone, having an online system where somebody will wait online for you and you'll get a push notification as soon as your number's up, right? I don't know exactly what the system looks like, but there's ways to do it better, and there's huge opportunities in government as the data from government gets opened up and citizens get access to that data. And I think a great example of that is Zillow, right? This is a company that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and why do they exist, right? The reason why Zillow exists is because, one, governments raise money, local governments raise money primarily based on property tax values, right? And so because of that, property tax values are public data that everyone has access to, right? So if we raised tax revenue some other way, right, if it was just sales tax or something like that, this data would never be available. It seems like relatively private data, like what you paid for your house seems like something that, it's kind of weird that that's public, right? But that's the way it is because of the way our taxes are structured in most municipalities. And because of that, Zillow was able to piggy bank on this open data and build a $100 million business providing a nicer interface to this data that the government wasn't able to provide. So I think that's a great example of sort of somebody taking advantage of open data, providing great value on top of it. Another very familiar example is Google Maps, right? So Google Maps, Google, of course, has their street view, cars that they drive around in. They're collecting a lot of data of their own, but specifically this live traffic data, in most municipalities, Google collects that from the municipalities, right? So the municipalities are collecting that government and either giving it or licensing it to Google to use in an application like Google Maps. And so because of that, you can see the little red lines or yellow lines depending on how much traffic there is in either direction. And so it's just another example of this really valuable data, right? Like this is hugely valuable to be able to know, to be able to estimate how long it's going to take from point A to point B, factoring in traffic. And the only reason that's possible is because the government's collecting that data and Google is using it. Ooh, is that too fast? Ooh, sorry, that slide's out of order. So, one thing you might wonder is kind of what, okay, so there's all this open data, right? There's Open 311, so now you can get access to pothole data, graffiti data, things like that. A lot of cities have open crime data. That's a new movement to put that data online, although it's very controversial. So what if there's kind of not open data, right? What if you don't have access to data? What can you do? And so this is here. I'm just going to load this page from scratch so you can see see what it is. So this is. Does that work?